Going here. So I'm really glad to have all of you here. I just want to welcome all of you for joining on this virtual discussion we're calling a conversation of understanding regarding race relations in America. I'm Kevin Gorley. Many of you already know me. Some of you don't know me yet here. I initiated this idea with Darius a few weeks ago as part of this group I organized with some friends called Life Insights. It's a group open to anyone and is free to attend. And we started by meeting at my business, which is a photography studio in Northwest Austin. We started this with the vision that we could make the world a better place if we intentionally took time to get to know more people around us and sharing in this thing we call life. We've been meeting in person once a week for over 2 years and now have transitioned over to virtual online meetings. Purpose of our group is really to offer a place where anyone can join us as we explore insights about life, learn together, listen to others' perspectives, hear from people whose life experiences are different from our own, and while doing so, agreeing to honor mutual respect of one another. We've done many book discussions, TED Talk discussions, we've gone out to dinner and had potluck dinners, invited a wide range of guest speakers who've shared their life experience as someone with cerebral palsy or is blind or deaf or an inspirational people that who are making this world a better place by helping others like Darius, or people who are helping the homeless, or people who are going into the prison in faith-based ministry called Kairos, or helping people with PTSD, or talking to us about life in Cuba, and so many more things. In a sense, this is our attempt to put into practice the notion of loving our neighbors more. It's really about community, connection, and love. Now, Darius is a friend of mine. I got to know him through the photography work I've done for him, and I admire him so much for the work he's doing to empower youth to unlock their hidden potential. And when I reached out to him recently about this idea for this event, he was immediately on board with the idea. And so this is jointly sponsored by Darius Pettway and by our Life Insights group. In the midst of all the racial tensions and protests of today, what is really happening is not the result of just recent events as much as it is from many decades where racial disparities have prevailed and countless injustices have occurred and have been tolerated as the status quo. But right now, the world is listening at an unprecedented level, acknowledging that this is the time and opportunity for positive change, although there's still a long journey ahead. We wanted this to be a time to hear from Darius, since he has already done so much to make our world a better place and has invited various friends and colleagues, which we'll introduce, who might be able to bring greater insights into all that is happening right now. I'm a male Caucasian who has lived a mostly privileged life, even in ways that I didn't even understand was privileged until later in life. And I've not experienced much of the prejudice. And I was born into a world where I had a distinct advantage in my life simply because of the color of my skin. I figure we all need to take more time to listen to persons of color, to gain their insights, to acknowledge they have an equal place at the table. I cannot possibly ever understand if I do not choose to listen. And I think it's important to listen to others who work in the criminal justice system, educators, people who work with youth, anyone who is actively seeking to move our society to racial unity and equality. So here we are, taking some time to listen. In our discussion here, this will primarily be an opportunity for us to hear from Darius and the friends and colleagues he has invited specifically, just representing different professions and life experiences. Nothing about this is scripted. It's a time to respect and to listen. We have some others who have been permitted to enter into this online Zoom forum, and I'm glad to see all of you here. It's an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment, but we'll maintain this as a time to primarily hear from Darius and the people he asked to be a part of this, so we give the majority of the time to hear from them. We also have others that will be watching live streaming on YouTube, and we were designated to end at 2:30, but because we started a little bit late, we'll be a little bit loose on that, probably 2:45 will end. And we could really start this with any one of the questions that we listed on our website that we'd be discussing. But from here, I'm transitioning over away from me. So welcome, Darius. Tell us a little bit about you and the people you invited to be guest participants in our discussion.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you all for coming, joining, giving us your time, lending us your information and knowledge that we can use to make this world a better place. As you all know, my name is Darius, author of A Chance To, and I have spent numerous years giving my life to restore opportunity into our youth. It's unfortunate we are at a detriment time in our community where we have two forces dividing against each other. And right now, in this moment, we're going to take resources, individuals, people, stories that are in their profession, that are giving back, that are in the community, in our churches, in our homes, to really make a difference. And I pray that if there are any youth, any individuals that are watching this live stream, that you just listen with open ears and you allow us to implement hope into our community. So I just want to thank you all for lending your time. I see Shaq, he's in this vehicle. I see Ms. Wilbur, who's actually the editor for A Chance Too. So thank you, Ms. Wilbur, and I love you for joining us. I see so many smiling faces. We have Jeff Trevelyan here. He's the county commissioner of Austin, Texas. So he's a very influential guy. He's very, he's a stellar, he's a role model for that community, especially for the African-Americans. So I just want to turn it over to Jeff himself and kind of give a brief introduction and, just kind of give us some hope and some love and some information.
Well, good morning. How are you guys this morning?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right.
Great.
Good morning.
Well, just looking at the screen gives me hope. I imagine if Dr. King were sitting here, what he would say is, all of us sitting together and talking about listening to each other and making this a better community is a victory in and of itself. But it is a really starting point. And I think, as we go through the COVID process, as we see, many of you that have been watching the news know that the rate of infection over the last 48 hours has more than quadrupled. And what we're seeing is we hope that we're not going to meet capacity with our hospitals, but there's a chance that we might. We hope that we're going to have all of the resources that we need to serve people, but it's going to be important that we work with each other and understand each other and know how to help each other. It's important to do things like follow the capital area food bank list. We had a church stood up today, St. James Baptist Church on MLK, that served over 500 people 30 pounds of food each. So every family got 30 pounds of food that they could hopefully use as we go forward. The question is, how can we push people to services so that things that they don't have because maybe unfortunately they're not working or they don't have access through their family, that we push them to places where they can be helped. It's important to know that there is a website, Travis County COVID, that can tell you all of the resources that are available, how you can get to them. City of Austin has a COVID site, tells you about a lot of resources, how you can get to them. We have assistance for small businesses. The county put up $10 million for small businesses. You can look at the county's COVID site, it'll tell you how to get to them. We have rental assistance, electricity assistance, all of these you can find through our COVID sites. It's important that those of us who have internet access, those of us who have networks that we can serve, we know that there are resources that we can find and we can help. I'm happy that we have tried to work together because there was a time where it's not just the laws that were we've had laws in place that would protect us all. It is our customs that did not protect us. And I think what the larger community is finding is that the customs that the African-American community has had to deal with forever aren't customs that the whole community had to deal with. And that's only going to change when we demand it. I think that when you look at what happened with George Floyd, it's similar to something that happened in 1965 when there was a march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965. John Lewis, who's a congressman now, said, look, we didn't think that these officers were going to ride horses We're going to put dogs on people. We're going to beat people with clubs on national TV so that everybody could see it. But they did. And the nation collectively said, we can't live, we can't live with this. If we are America and we're supposed to be the best country in the world, we can't treat our own citizens like this. And I think that is what you have seen with the George Floyd incident. People got to see what African Americans have known for hundreds of years now, that sometimes with impunity, some law enforcement will do violent things, even murder us. And folks didn't believe that that would happen, and they saw it on TV, and it's undeniable. What we're saying now is, now that we know their difficulties, now that COVID is showing us that there are gaps in our health delivery system, in our food delivery system, how do we work together every day as citizens to address those gaps? What can we do? Do we know elderly people in our community that we can serve? Do we know new parents that we can serve? Do we know folks that we can actually reach out to and work with ourselves? And what we try to do every day at the county is build an inventory of information that allows regular people in the community to find that information and share it with people that don't have internet access or don't know how to work around government or the public sector. When we work together, we are stronger and we can do significant things to serve each other. Now I'm Baptist. I can talk for 4 or 5 hours without taking too many breaths. So, but I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I answer any questions that you might have, and that I can guide you to any resources I might be aware of.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Real quick, I'm gonna introduce a couple of folks. We have my brother. I call him Rob, but his real name is Roger. He's a police officer in the Detroit area. So I want to acknowledge him, to show him some love. So he's here. But before we get into the introductions, I want to also introduce my cousin, who's the pastor of IROC Church in Detroit, Michigan. So Brandon, if you would like, could you please lead us in prayer?
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you all for your sacrifice and your service. And let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear gracious, kind Father, we thank you once again for another day. For this is the day that you have made. And firstly, we choose to rejoice and be glad in it. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercifulness. We thank you for your kindness. You are merciful, loving God. You're the great I am. We thank you for loving us in spite of us. We thank you that each and every one of us could take some time today to gather together on this Zoom call, that despite the coronavirus, despite the pandemic, despite what is going on in the economy, despite what is going on in each of our individual worlds, we were able to gather together on a conscious agreement to decide that we want to live and change. We want to make changes. And we thank you that each and every individual who's gathered here has decided to open up their hearts, open up their minds to be receptive of a new idea, of a new way of life, of living together instead of dividing. So we thank you for each and every person who's made this decision to be on this call so that we can all learn how to live with one voice, to know what it's like to live in the world of our brother or our sister who's on the call, or someone who may not be the same color of us, who may not have grown up in the same neighborhoods, who may not have been afforded some of the same privileges or some of the same gifts and talents. We thank you that we can all come together, not only as individuals, but as brothers and sisters in Christ. We ask that now, God, you'll open up our hearts and our minds to be receptive to what each and every one of us may have to think or to say, that we may understand each other all the more better, and that all will be well in Jesus' name. Thank you for the host. Thank you for the Darius. Thank you for the people that put this thing together, Father, who decided to put something of this magnitude together from across the world, who want better, who want change, who want justice, who want peace. And we thank you that being the God of peace, you're able to provide means of understanding that go far beyond what we're able to know. And we thank you, God, that something big, something extravagant is going to happen as a result of each person who's joined on this call with a receptive mind. We ask that everyone will be in peace, that someone will learn something about somebody they did not know before, and that when we leave this call, we'll go from impact to influence in our generation, in our counties, in our neighborhoods, and that you'll bring about a change, an everlasting change in this world because of people like us. In Jesus' name, we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. My heart is warming. So I want to start with introductions here briefly of the individuals that I have invited to join this panel. Again, for anyone that's watching live, this is Transparent Conversation. These are individuals that are working in their field. This is accurate account. This is transparency. And I want you all to really hear it hands-on of individuals that are in deep into our communities. And again, you all forgive me. I'm under the weather, so I'm a little stuffy in my nose, but I'm here and I'm ready to rock and roll. So I want to start with Rod. Can you kind of just tell us about yourself?
How's everybody doing?
You're doing good.
Great.
Okay.
So my name is Rod Barksdale. Like Darius mentioned, I am a police officer in the Detroit area. I do not work for the city of Detroit, but I'm in the Detroit area. Work plainclothes unit. Some people, call it undercover. And I'm basically here to answer any questions related to being Black in law enforcement, being Black in America, just law enforcement in general, any recent tragic events that has been happening across the county with these senseless killings. If you guys got any questions, I'm here and I'm open to discuss anything.
Thank you. That's powerful. Ms. Wilbert.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. As Darius mentioned, I had the honor of editing his book. It was just a real privilege. And basically, I am a writer, an editor, a teacher, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. And my great-grandson is a 9-year-old little Black boy in Utah. And he's very dear to all of us. His mother is an integral part of our family. And I am fearing for him in the future. I'm hoping that it's going to be a safe place for him. On another track, because of my age, I have actually experienced as a student and a teacher from the very beginning when George Wallace was barring the door for the little girl. And I lived in Helena, Montana. We didn't know what in the world they were doing. We had an integrated classroom. We asked our teacher what in the world is going on down there. And the whole class felt that the white people down there and the police people down there were just insane. We couldn't understand it. And I think what that is, my experience there is we were not taught to hate. And I think you have to teach hate for it to exist. And, it's my whole life, I have been trying very hard to do what I could, little bits, because I'm just a little person. I taught in integrated schools. I taught my children to respect everybody. I have children who teach in, one of my daughters teaches at Pettway Junior High School. She had taught at Reagan for 5 years. Another one teaches in an integrated school in Utah. I've raised social workers. I have raised people who give. And I think that's the one thing I have done other than just to care. And I think we just have to take little steps and hopefully cumulatively we will get somewhere.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Tigreed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tigreed. I'm based in San Francisco, California. I am a second grade teacher in the area. And my family, we started a ice cream sandwich business back in 2010. So I do that on the side as well. I am Palestinian American. So with recent events, I do feel like the struggle for both Black Americans and Palestinian Americans is very similar. So I see the same thing going on in both communities. So although I don't know directly how people today feel, I can relate to it. So we have the same struggle. So that's why I wanted to join today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. D. Walker, my man.
Hello, my name is Deshaun Walker. Wow, this is a pleasure being here, but I was an at-risk kid. I was a juvenile, but now I'm an educator. Been an educator for over 19 years. And being an educator doesn't mean you're just always a teacher. You educate doing different things as being a counselor, being a mentor. I am a father. I'm a brother. It's so many. Growing up in East Austin, and I mean not Central Austin, I'm talking about when you couldn't walk down 12th Street, East Austin. It's been a struggle for me right now in this day and age, because at the end of the day, you try to reach out to a young man now and you get cussed out because you want them to pull up their pants and stop using the N-word, and it hurts me the most, because the things we've been fighting for in East Austin, we could never get. But now that society has changed, gentrification, everybody is moving to Central Austin. They can get everything they want at the Austin Parks and Rec. We used to get kicked out the gym. And it's a blessing to be here today, because I see a kid named Caleb on here that I begged to be a school teacher. I begged him to be a school teacher. And from my understanding, he is now a school teacher in the Dallas area. So Caleb, I'm proud of you. It's very hard. It hurts me because the kids off the street, we asked Austin Parks and Rec many years ago to allow the gym to have open gym. We kept getting denied. But now people want a dog park and it's getting built. And it kind of hurt me, because it just felt like the kids that need Austin Parks and Rec and need these gyms are getting pushed to the side, but we can have a dog park. But this is a discussion that we might have later on in this segment, but it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I love it coming from the heart. We can go here with Trevelyan Jr., Jeff.
How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
How you doing, man?
It's great. It's great to see everybody in here. It's great to see this diverse of a room. I've had the pleasure of being Darius' friend for the past, I would say, when did we get here? 3 years now. We were able to teach together at the Young Men's Leadership Academy on the east side of Austin. I'm now a teacher and coach in Round Rock, Texas. I grew up in the greater Austin area, spent a lot of time here. So it definitely meant a lot to me to come back and serve those kids that were once in the same position that I was. I coach football, basketball, and track at Hopewell Middle School. We are as far as demographics go, we do have the biggest Black population in Round Rock ISD. So I do take my job seriously as far as just being able to mentor and guide those kids. Me and Darius have had a lot of talks just about advancement, and I'm proud of him for everything that he's doing, and I hope to follow suit in that same way. If I could convey any message today, it would just be one of positivity, one of hope. Definitely am frustrated, definitely have had disheartening moments, but just being in this room with this diverse of a crowd and, having my wingman over here, he has the ability to make a few things move as well. So that's definitely just, it is, it's just great. It's just, I'm trying to think of a better word, but for lack of a better word, it's just good. It's good to be here. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. We can go Donovan D. Carter.
How y'all doing? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yep, hear you.
All right. That's an honor to be here. I appreciate, the opportunity to be here. Just to make a long story short, me and Darius, we've been knowing each other since college. Was roommates for sure. Right now I'm working for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, and really, I'm here to just give insight and to share a little bit of knowledge on how to understand who you are and why these things happen to only a certain group of people. But other than that, man, I'm open ears with everything. I'm listening, I'm hearing, and it's just a privilege to be able to be here and work with somebody like Darius, who really inspired to give back to the community, especially the communities that we come from. And it's just an honor. I'm not really a long-winded person, so appreciate y'all for having me. If I got any questions I can answer, just let me know.
Thank you, Donovan. I really appreciate that. Mr. Caleb, and then we will go from Caleb to Mr. Tinsley. Can you hear us, Caleb?
Okay. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Good. How you doing, man?
Good. Yeah, again, I appreciate you having me, Darius. Honestly, I got an education about 2014. That's when I started subbing in Austin at a lot of schools around the district. I will say that being a sub exposes you to different levels of education. So that's an advantage if a teacher is wanting to get into education. Long story short, being in education, you see the impact you make. So that was confirmation for me when I got into education, just seeing the impact and the type of relationships that I could build with the students in the demographic areas. Coach Walker is a great example of somebody who gave me hope, coming from the same area, Northeast Austin, East Austin. So, seeing other Black professionals gives you hope. I know his father is a legend in the district. I met him when I was subbing at McCallum for some time. So that was an honor as well to, work with his father. But yeah, so that's what I think we need. I listen to my students a lot. Some of the things they say, even when I first got to the school I work in Lancaster ISD in Austin, Dallas, DFW area. Asked me, have you been to jail before? This and that. Are you a teacher? Are you a real teacher? And things like that. Because, a lot of kids never really seen a young Black, certified teacher, instructing them. So they had questions. So that kind of, gave me an insight of the psychological programming, in a sense of how these young minority children think. So that also is a challenge, and that's also is something that gets me up in the morning every day to do my job and take it seriously for the psychological impact, not just teaching from a curriculum base and instructional base, but also teaching life lessons. Most students gravitate towards their teacher more when you can build that relationship and give them real life applications on what's really going on in the world. So, for me, for my personal teaching style, I like to stay modern and current with my lesson planning and things like that. But yeah, so I've been teaching. So 2014 is when I got in. I've been professional teaching for 2 years. Next year will be my 3rd year professionally. But it's been an honor. It's taught me a lot about myself as well. I tell a lot of people it saved my life in a way, because when I'm talking to my students, I'm also talking to myself, making sure that I'm keeping myself in check and, being that great leader in the community that they need. So that's pretty much who I am. I'm glad to be here. I want to learn a lot on this stream. So this is an honor. Appreciate you, Darius.
Thank you, Caleb. Shaq,
Yeah. What's up, man? Thanks for having me here. Like everybody said, man, I'm encouraged to see the diversity on this call. A little bit of background about me. So I have a degree in mechanical engineering, and I now work as a engineer in the power distribution field space. So I work for a company called Eaton. Basically, we manufacture electrical power distribution equipment. But the reason I'm here today and I'm involved with Darius's organization is because the idea of mentorship really resonated with me, and that really came from my upbringing. So I'm from the east side of Indianapolis, and I was fortunate enough to have both of my parents in the house, and so I saw how that helped my trajectory stay positive, whereas a lot of friends around me didn't have that same fortune. And I saw the impact of how that impacted their life, and especially not having a strong male figure around them. It created a lot of issues within them personally, and led to some poor decisions. So I think mentorship is important, and that's my whole goal in being involved with this organization with Darius is providing that father figure for those who don't have that, and just giving them hope to want to succeed and do more.
Thank you, Shaq. Again, thank you all for coming and giving us your time, your love, your stories, your words. I really appreciate it. We can go ahead and dive in if you like. Let's get deep into the questions so we can get this thing going. So, Greg, you want to go ahead and start with number one? So pretty much what we're going to do here, we have a list of maybe 8 questions as far as systematic racism, communities of Black, of color, everything. We're just going to talk and just go ahead and let the conversation flow. Be happy, be organic, be yourself, be free. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask us, and we ask you all, and let's just have love and unity and peace, and let's end this with a mutual agreement of love, peace, and harmony. So, hold on. Before we go to Greg, Mr. Kevin, is there anything you'd like to say before we get started? Or introduction?
No, go for it.
Okay, to Greg, it's on you.
Oh, all right. We're just going to go straight down the list. So question number 1, does systematic racism exist? And if it does, how do we fix it?
Would anyone like to take that question?
Yeah, I can take that one. This is Shaq speaking. So I want to look at that question from a corporate perspective, because I do work in the corporate world, and my answer is yes. Systemic racism does exist, and I'll kind of paint the picture. So the majority of leaders and people with power in the corporate world are white men, and hiring practices basically are determined, by those people in power. And when we hire people for jobs, we hire people that look like us and that we can relate to. And if the majority of people in those hiring positions are white men, then the majority of people that they're going to hire on are going to be white men. And you've got taking a larger look at the corporations. The corporations recruit from predominantly white institutions like the Michigan States and University of UT Austin. And so the pool in the selection there is going to be majority white students that are feeding that pipeline to these big corporations. And and once they get into these corporations, they are able to develop and move up and advance a lot faster than some of their Black counterparts. So they're continuing that cycle of pushing white people through. And it's not that they don't deserve to be pushed through, but those opportunities are a lot more limited, for the Black employee, and that pipeline is a lot smaller for the Black students at the universities. So that in itself is systemic in the idea that nobody's saying the people in those positions are racist. They're just hiring based on practices that are normal that anyone would do. But how you change that is you begin to develop and advance some of your Black talent within the company, so that they're now in positions of power, and they can begin to create that equity and that equality. And then you can also change the hiring practices. So instead of focusing on majority predominantly white institutions, you can now focus on them as well as the HBCU, therefore expanding your talent pool. And the diversity the pipeline diversity that you're going to bring in, and this will help create equity within corporate America. Because right now we make up 13% of the population that as Black people, but and within my company, I think we're like 3%. and then the leaders that we have, I think it's even smaller than that. So that's how I see visually how systemic racism plays out in the corporate world.
Do we have anyone that would like to draw feedback in regards to systemic racism? Jeff, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. When you ask the question, does it exist? I think the answer is overwhelmingly yes, because humans like to interact with and do business with things and people that they are familiar with. It is easy to, in a place like Austin, which has a reputation of being progressive, but when you look at the housing patterns, you find that this city was segregated by race, by ordinance in 1928. Said people had to live, if you were African American, you lived east of 35, north of 7th Street, and south of 19th Street, which is MLK. And there were designated areas for the Hispanic community to live as well. So a lot of things that were done by law, and they were done for a long period of time. So the question becomes, if you made a decision that created specific economic and social inequities, what steps have you taken to counteract those decisions that were made? And what you find is we rarely have taken steps where we've made specific actions to move people. We've made very loose steps to address the problems that were created by that. When you look from the standpoint of historically underutilized businesses, it's easier for a government entity to take $1 million contract and give it to one group. It's more difficult to break that into $100,000 contracts, but it's only by making a smaller contract that you will be able to find a new business that has the capacity to do that work. Takes a little more administrative assistance, takes a little more monitoring, but in order to address the inequity that has been created, you have to give specialized type of oversight and assistance. When you look at the way that communities that were segregated have addressed their segregation. Jeff is a teacher, and I'm very proud of him being a teacher. His grandfather, my father, was a teacher. My mother was a teacher as well, and they taught initially in all segregated schools. And what they did at those schools was what a lot of people pay extra for in school districts now. They knew that a lot of their children didn't eat breakfast before they came to school. So they would show up early and they would teach them how to cook. And by teaching them how to cook, they gave them breakfast. They knew that their parents worked late at night, worked after dark. So they kept their schools open so that their kids would have a safe place to be. And they could go back to their classrooms and do their homework. They could go to the gym and play until their parents left. And these were all unpaid for things. They just did it because they were teachers, and they knew that the only way that their kids were going to find a way to trade school or the army or to college was if they had somebody who was going to take them by the hand and help them get there. What we have to understand is the problems that we have are man-made problems. All the man-made problems that we have solutions, but sometimes they take more time, they take more effort, they might even take a few more resources. But when you think of what has been taken from communities and distributed in ways that did not benefit those communities, you got to take the time to fix and repair those things in a systematic way. It's not a transaction or two, because small numbers of transactions do not make up for systems that intentionally removed or intentionally were designed not to serve the people that live in those areas.
Thank you for that. Would anyone like to chime in? Jeff McBride.
Yeah.
You and I, we speak about this topic often every day. Would you like to kind of give an imposing answer or give insight as far as systemic racism?
Well, what I'd like to do more than give an opposing argument is ask the question of how have things changed since the Civil Rights Act? What have we done? How have we progressed forward, or have we not progressed forward? What things have we done to close the racial disparity gap? I mean, I think I have an answer on, at least on my end, of what I feel like is what's going on in America today. But I would love to hear from some of the other people, especially Jeff, and some of the other people, as to what they feel as far as how that's changed.
Well,
could I go ahead? Could I say something?
Sure.
I think what I've seen is education in Austin. That's really the only school district I know about, Austin schools and Round Rock schools. When I went to school here, it was not an integrated system at all until the busing started right after I graduated. And you know, people fought it, but then they went along with it. And then there were inroads when I did my student teaching at old Johnston High School. It doesn't exist anymore. It was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And it was an interesting experience as a student teacher. I had volunteered to go into the East Austin schools to do that. But it was eye-opening to me how quickly everybody was just a person. And it was a growth moment for me. When I got a job in the Austin schools, I went into the Travis High School and then Crockett. And then as my children grew up, their schools were integrated. The neighborhoods were integrated. My neighborhood that I live in right now, I live in a 200 complex condominium neighborhood. We have every race there is, and the children all play right in front of my house, and I look out the window and I love it. So I see that as the change, as people getting used to each other, and then living together, going to school together, being friends. And I think it is a leg that is important in this whole issue.
And I want to chime in just for a second here. So I think we're all in agreement. Well, I don't know if we are. I'm going to say this out loud, but I think we're all in agreement that the education system in low-income neighborhoods is not up to standards, and it needs to be changed somehow, some way. You know, so I want to ask you as an educator, because you know this more than I do. What do you think are the steps that we can take to educate people in the low-income neighborhoods? Is school choice, for lack of better words, vouchers a way to go? Is it, you know, paying teachers a higher salary in those low-income neighborhoods? What is it that we can do to get them educated?
Is that to everybody or to me?
That's to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're an educator, so I wanted to ask you that question.
Right, and I raised educators, and my daughter, who teaches in Meditech and who taught at Reagan, is passionate about being a good teacher for those kids. She has mentored. She's a theater teacher, and she has mentored talented kids all the way through to make sure that they got scholarships for college, and some of them are graduating now. I think you've got to have good teachers and teachers who care. And I think the salaries are important because we've lost a lot of good people. They can't afford to be a teacher.
So do you think that if we, oh, no, go ahead. Who chimed in?
Kevin,
Somebody?
is it okay if I ask a question?
Go for it.
Please, please.
Okay, so, you know, when we talk about the Civil Rights Act, 1965, and we think that was 55 years ago. I mean, I'm sad and outraged that so little has changed since then. Why do you think not enough, so little to me? Why do you think that is? 55 years, that's such a long time.
So part of the answer to your question is, while the law changed, our customs did not change. Back in the 50s and even the 60s, to be a member of the NAACP was a fireable offense. And my parents, when they taught in Mississippi, and the teachers who taught in Texas, if they joined the NAACP, they could be fired for that. Part of what happens is we have to recognize the first thing is you have to have passionate teachers who believe that all children can learn. Unfortunately, in too many of our classrooms, not all of our teachers believe that our children can learn. I think that we have to recognize that when we are talking about schools in the poorer parts of town, whether they're poorer parts of town with white children or Hispanic children or Black children, those schools need enrichment. And what I mean is they need after-school programs so that kids can get extra opportunity, extra learning. I mean, part of the problem that you have when Austin ISD desegregated and used busing, one thing that you saw happen was a lot of your most experienced African-American teachers were moved to the white part of town. Right now, when you look in East Austin, you will see your least experienced teachers teaching your children. It is important that you have the most experienced teachers who are comfortable and familiar with cultural learning attributes, learning styles, who are connected to parents as well, because it is not just what the child wants to do, it's what the parent understands that the child needs to do. And I'll give you an example of this. When I was in 9th grade, I made the varsity basketball team. I made and during 4th period, which is lunch period, it was the only time in my school where AP algebra was taught. I went home and I told my mother that I couldn't take AP algebra because we had practice in 4th period. My mom said, "That's quite all right. I understand, baby. I thought we'll get it worked out." I reported to basketball practice on Monday at 4th period. My coach said, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in AP algebra." My mother talked to my coach and my counselor and made sure I was going to be in AP algebra because she figured I would make my living in probably in something closer to algebra than in basketball. And you have to have parents involved in the process. You have to have after-school programs that give kids enrichment. The Science Academy, for example, the magnet school was something that was presented as a desegregation remedy. I said, look, if we put all of these learning opportunities in LBJ, it will create better opportunities for the kids who live in those neighborhoods. And what we found was the kids that went to the Science Academy were bussed in. The kids that lived in the neighborhood were not involved in the Science Academy. That desegregation remedy did not help them. What would have helped them was paid tutors after school to make sure that the kids understood the materials that they were being taught during the course of the day. There are effective remedies. One is making sure that you have experienced certified teachers, because what study after study tells us is if you've got an African-American child and he has a teacher that's African-American, by the time he's in 3rd grade, he's twice as likely to go to college. We have to understand, we have to understand the types of experiences that our kids need. We have to understand the learning environment that we must create. And one of the reasons that we see charter schools catching on is a lot of them take that old segregated school model of making sure that they stay after school, that they provide enrichment, and that they work with teachers. When we do that in the public schools, we find those kids performing just as well as the kids in any other type of learning environment. I'm a public school supporting person. That's what produced me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
And if you also look at the numbers, African-American students are 3 times more likely to be suspended for offenses at the same rate as Caucasian per se. So if you go deep into the school system, in order for us to teach, educate, mentor, if we don't have the bodies in the classroom, it's hard to teach. In my book, A Chance Too, I wrote about suburban philosophies teaching urban students. There's a direct correlation that philosophies that come from the urban, right, and suburban students are totally different. You may have a kid that sleeps throughout class. So instead of kicking them out or send them to the teacher, you have to figure out what's going on in this kid's life. And maybe this kid had to stay up and watch his kids, watch his brothers and sisters because his mom was at work. So we just have to figure out how can we get, high educated teachers that understand the urban philosophy of teaching. And then when you can do that, we got to keep the kids in the classroom. And this is a brilliant thing. We came up with this ideology called ISS, in-school suspension. And that was created to keep kids in school versus sending them into communities for suspension, for behavior. So again, the numbers states that African-American kids are 3 times more likely to be suspended outside of school than of those of other races. And then you look at the criminal justice system, when you think about color from African-Americans to Hispanics, we represent 13%, as Sheikh stated, of the world's population. But if you think about the criminal justice system, we represent almost 40%. And then me and Jeff also had a conversation on how do you get fathers inside the home? Well, let's start there. Most of our dads, if you walk into a public school and you say, hey, is your dad in your life? Probably gonna get this answer. No. Where is he? Prison. And
Yeah,
this is the true fact of how we have to go deep into the system and figure out why, not the what, but we need to figure out why our kids are not being educated and given the same opportunities of those of other races.
Right.
I know. If I can interject for one quick second, and I'll let you talk. I know Shaq had talked about he had a father and a mother in his life, and his friends didn't, and it made an impact on him. So I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that.
Well, if I could chime in, I coach too as well. So I would say this: being an athletic coach and being a classroom teacher, that enhances your experience as a teacher. It also makes you a better teacher in the classroom as well, because you build a relationship with kids. You're with them longer. Pretty much, you with them from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening sometimes. So you spend a lot of time with them. And, to piggyback off of what Darius said, a lot of kids don't have their fathers, whether it's a young Black female, a young Black male, young Hispanic male, young Hispanic female. And you can see that, in some cases that they're angry to a certain extent. So I think going back to cultural training will help a lot of teachers and, even law enforcement officials, because the cultural differences can have an impact on how a police officer can contact a civilian to a certain extent. So just having that training with law enforcement and teachers will make the community more cohesive and bring them together so everybody understands everybody, because, who knows how many hate crimes and, misconceptions and discrepancies happen because of the cultural differences between the two people making contact. Police interactions is big. Like, what type of police officers are they putting in this particular neighborhood? You know, are they culturally trained, or, you know, have they been psychologically evaluated on a consistent basis? We need to have these type of people that are serving in the community, because that's what they swore oath to. So you just having that more training, it'll make more everybody cohesive, and that'll start, you know, a bigger conversation with justice reform, which our Black community needs very much so. So it starts on the ground, on the ground level, with the police officers and the teachers and, you know, people that impact the community on a day-to-day basis as professional, you know, figures in the community. So so that's what I think we should start off with, just interaction and, you know, cultural training amongst all.
Okay. Hey, Rod, if you don't mind, can you interject? Do you believe that's been, again, you have, I think you have your badge on now, correct? Just
negative. No, it's in my wallet.
Oh, you got your wallet on you. Okay, I see. So, question: do you believe that our officers, right, when it comes to community living, right, do you put certain officers in certain B areas that can relate to the population, or do you just stick? Let's say, okay, say if you're in Detroit, correct? Do you put more veteran tenured officers in high crime areas, or do you put officers that can relate to the people or the needs of that community? Can you kind of interject?
Honestly, I feel like you put a mixture of both.
Okay.
Because you may have a situation where you have officers that can relate more to the area, but not have that mental experience as far as dealing in law enforcement and you know, what people call rookies. No.
Okay.
Me personally, if I was a supervisor, I want to honestly put a bunch of rookies in areas where they could completely relate to, because at the same time, the same people in that community can see that. They can see, you know, what officer is seasoned and who's new, or, you know, just because they may look like us, talk like us, or be similar to us, I can easily get stuff over their head.
Okay.
So it's real easy to be manipulative. And with the you know, veteran officers who have been in those areas, who know, you know, certain people. For example, I work with within my plainclothes unit, I worked with my sergeant, who can drive down the street and say, "Oh, that's so and so, that's so and so, that's so and so. I know his dad. I know his brother. No, sadly, his brother got killed last year." You know. And with me being new to the unit, even though I can relate more to the area that I'm in, it's a plus to have someone like that riding with you. So yeah, I can relate more, so I can engage and handle certain situations a lot better than he can, just based off who I am. But with his knowledge, I know, okay, this so and so, I know he just lost his brother last year. So it's not like, you know, we have to be 100% strict and stern, because honestly, everybody doesn't have to go to jail, regardless of what they may have a warrant for. You know, our unit is a felony driven unit, so we know we're basically working off felonies. The other day we had somebody, you know, distraught. They had warrants, traffic stop. They were mad at us for pulling them over. But we're like, look, you're doing 50 miles per hour in a 30-mile zone. You got kids out here running around playing. Why are you giving us an attitude knowing that you have XYZ going on? You have these warrants. We're telling you to slow down. That's it. We're not taking you to jail for these warrants. We're not messing with you. Slow down. Have a good day. His entire demeanor changed. So when you have, you know, a dual set of officers, both experienced and both can culturally relate, it's a lot better. And honestly, a lot of these situations that's been going around the nation may not be happening. Could have been prevented.
Yeah, I agree. Ms.
Could I interject a question from somebody that posted on our chat?
Oh, go ahead.
Deborah Cole, why don't you voice your question?
Yeah, Are you there,
Oh,
Deborah?
thank you. This goes back to something that, is it Coach Walker? Is it Coach? Yeah, Coach Walker said earlier about gentrification. I live in Austin, and every time I live just off of 12th Street, but on the west side of 35. Every time I cross 35, I'm astounded how much more construction and building is going on. And I'm just wondering, since gentrification is already happening, is there a kinder, gentler way that the flavor of the neighborhood can be retained and people aren't pushed out? And I just can't imagine what property taxes must be now.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Cole.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you know, about 5 years ago, the old airport that was on Manor Road.
Yeah.
When they built that neighborhood, they said affordable housing, correct? When they proposed that, it's supposed to be affordable housing.
For who?
Thank you. That's the question. That's the question. When they proposed that, a lot of people from East Austin was hurt because y'all saying affordable housing, but for who?
Yeah.
You know, taxes went up. Then if you look at Mueller, I love the area. Trust me, I do.
Yeah.
But I think the community was just, what's the right word I want to use? I think we was tricked. Because when they voted for that proposal of affordable housing, but who was it affordable for?
Yeah.
If you look at that area and those houses, I say about 1% is African American stay over there. And it hurts. Because not only that, it was our neighborhood from Northeast Austin to East Austin, like, you know, who's it affordable for? What can we afford? Like you said, teachers in Austin ISD doesn't get paid enough. That's why they going to Pflugerville. That's why they going to Round Rock. That's why they going to Maynard. That's why they going to Dale Valley. Those teachers deserve, even a beginner to start off in Austin at $55,000. That's just me.
But do you think it's just a runaway train at this point?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Because the University of Texas is buying up majority of the East Austin anyway.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I would like to have Miss Melissa, who's very highly educated in that field when it comes to education. If you don't mind, could you please kind of interject and kind of, you know, shed some light on that as well? Can she hear me? Miss Melissa? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. I had questions just related to something Jeff had said regarding voucher systems and school selection that I had concerns about. As I'm a retired teacher, I've taught 29 years in the Round Rock School District, and you know, our schools are funded through local property taxes. So if you have a community that is more low income, they're collecting less money that can support fewer after school programs and enrichment opportunities in lower income neighborhoods. And so you have a built-in inequity that then sort of perpetuates the fact that the kids get less experience, less tutoring, less equipment, fewer computers, fewer technology, so that sort of exacerbates that systemic inequity of opportunity. And so I think that rather than pulling money and student allocations away from public schools, you've got to invest more equally across school districts to provide more equity of funding and you know, opportunities to engage all students and opportunities that would advance them. I think a lot of the pandemic issues that have disproportionately affected lower income students have also been because their schools lack a lot of the equipment and opportunities that would help students learn remotely. So from my experience, it's you consider your funding for schools. I think it's kind of at the root of the problem, and it shouldn't be diluting public funding by taking away to vouchers and other things, but rather a reinvestment in more equal funding opportunities.
Where do you see that funding coming from? That's what I'm asking.
I don't have answers. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I see that that's the root of the problem. I don't know how to address it.
No, I'm fine with
Jeff,
that. Yeah.
Can I chime in right there? So
Sure.
I don't know exactly how the funds work and how everything is allocated, but one thing we are hearing right now is a call to defund the police. And when I first heard that, I was like, wait, why would we want to take money away? When I think there needs to be more investment there. But when I did some more research, defunding the departments in these major cities are making 6 times what, or the funding, they're getting 6 times the funding that the school systems are getting. So by defunding the police, you just use the funds, you use some of the funds that were going there, and you can allocate those towards the school district. Like I think in Columbus, Ohio was just an example. The police department there gets funded almost $400 million, and the school district is $6 million. So looking at that large disparity and how that funding is being allocated, I think that's one way you can increase the funding that the schools get. And again, just defunding the police doesn't necessarily mean taking away all of their money. It's looking at how can we use that money that they're already getting more effectively, and where are some inefficiencies that funding can be reallocated to the school district.
How do we do, like in Dallas? The common consensus among police officers is that they don't have enough funding, that they're lacking the funding. But also, too, the schools in Dallas are lacking the funding. They're not performing to standards, and that's just a common fact. I don't care whether it's a white neighborhood or a black neighborhood. None of them are getting the funding that they needed. So how would you take money from a department that's underfunded and give it to a school system that's underfunded? I see in areas where that is the case, you could do that. Absolutely. If they're being overfunded, yeah, take them away. I'm good with that. But how do we take it from, and I'll use Dallas as the example because that's where I live. Dallas is underfunded as a police department, but it's also underfunded as a school, and we don't perform very well as a school. And we need to change that.
So when you say the police are underfunded, I think you can start to look at where the funds are going within the police department. So I read one thing where a lot of that pay goes towards overtime. So a lot of the additional funds that the police using is going towards overtime pay, and a lot of officers that not, of course, we're not going to say all officers are bad, but there are some officers who game the system and say their shift ends at 5. They'll make a stop or something at 4:30, and then it takes them 2 hours to process paperwork. Now they're getting, overtime pay for, something that they could have done, or during standard hours. So to answer your question, there are some ways that you can use the funds more effectively, therefore not necessarily causing them to be underfunded. So if all of the funds are being used correctly, or if the system is if within the system are operating with accountability in the way that they're supposed to, then I think some of that underfunding goes away.
So there are a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, when we start talking about funding in schools, what you really have to look at is intra-district funding, because what we find is that a lot of the schools in the poor part of town are significantly underfunded as compared to schools in the richer parts of town. Title I funds were designed to address that, But what many school districts have done is they've taken the federal money that should be on top of those local dollars, and they've reallocated the local dollars. We have to make sure that that local funding takes care of the necessities, and Title I funding takes care of the extra day needs that poor schools have, and provide the training for the teachers, provide more life skills for the kids. If we look at intra-district inequities, I think that's one good way to start. And as you talked about what's happening with police officers like teachers have been asked to do more things than their jobs used to require. We ask them to be social workers. We ask them to be mental health workers. We ask
Absolutely.
them that we should not be doing. We should be hiring social workers and assigning them to police officers. We should have them do what it is they're trained to do, and hire other people to do things that they have not been trained to do. And I think that we would get better outcomes. We also have to look at the way that we train them initially. There should be a longer cadet period, I believe. I think that we should have a system that we used to have a system in Austin where people who were going to be police officers started in a police corps cadet program where they had to work in the community for a year and then go into the cadet class. They worked on after school programs. They also worked on youth athletic programs. And you had officers who met students when they were 5 years old and knew about their parents and knew about their neighborhood, rather than meeting them when they're 15 years old, acting like 15-year-olds. So we have to make sure that we give them the tools that are going to make them be successful in their jobs, and not expect them to do things that their jobs aren't designed to do.
I agree.
I might interject here. We've got another question from Deborah Cole. Also, I want to point out, since we started a little bit late, we'll end a little bit late. So probably, let's say 2:45 will be an end time, just to kind of get you an idea of where we're going in this. But Debbie, why don't you ask your question? I think it's really an important question.
Oh, okay. Well, it's fairly simple, but with a complex answer. So how can individuals, such as those of us that are part of this group, be a part of the solution toward ending racism?
Wow, I would like to interject there for a few. And I'm just gonna go out, I'm just gonna say it. I feel for African Americans that are in communities that are plagued by police brutality, whatever the case may be, it is my assertion to say that guys who can complete a background check, guys need to get in, fill out the application, and go and apply to be a police officer. We need to apply to be lawyers, doctors, nurses, attorneys, DAs. We need guys of color that could lead a community where they come from. And I wholeheartedly believe that that's first and foremost. You know, we need guys of color, in which there are, even in Dallas, there's a high number of African Americans, but we need guys that come from their communities to police their own communities. And that's just my opinion. So anyone else to kind of chime in? Ryan, you want to talk about?
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you with that, and that's one of the biggest things that the city of Detroit faces right now. The city of Detroit department is so understaffed. I heard on the radio yesterday, they were asking one district for 6 officers to work in a whole complete other side of town. And it's like, how can you ask somebody to work in a complete part of town, like working in District 9, which is on the east side, going to work in number 6, which is on the west side? Completely 2 different parts of towns, one being worse than the other. Sometimes they're running neck to neck. And, a lot of the times we have to get people out of this inner city mentality, this small town mentality, where, it's always F the police. And I feel like if they had more experiences, interactions with the police, they would definitely change. Part of the reason why I even joined and signed up to become a police officer is so I could help change. And so far, so good. But as far as getting into the heads of the youth that's coming up in the inner city, that's the hard part. I feel like probably get officers in schools more. Have positive interactions more in schools with kids at a young age. Get them familiar with police. I think I had a kid maybe 8 years old come up to me one day. I was in plain clothes, didn't even know. See my badge, my gun on my hip. He was like, "Oh, I want to be an officer." I'm like, "Hey man, go for it. Stay on the right path, go for it." So I feel like that's the biggest. Talking to kids or while they're young or while they're in the school system, probably early high school, middle school ages, getting to talk to them. Get them gears rolling. If you really want to, be a part of the community, be part of change, be the change.
Yeah. Hey, Rod, you brought up a real good point, man. I like the statement you made about getting kids out of the mindset of F the police, because that statement also, it bugs me when I hear it as well, because my grandfather was a police chief in Tennessee for years, and my godfather was also a cop up in East Chicago, Indiana for years. So I have a deep respect for law enforcement, and thanks for your service as well, brother.
I appreciate it.
But I think where a lot, I think where a lot of that it's not really F the police. So I think where a lot of that anger comes from is our run-ins and our experience with the police, and a lot of them are more so negative, and so that drives that frustration, and it just verbalized as F the police. So I like your point about, man, just getting that FaceTime with the kids early, just being visible, with them and showing them that, we can trust you. Because I think that's where the biggest, that's what drives that F the police mentality, is that there's no trust there. Every time
Absolutely.
that, we have a run-in with the cop, it's always a negative experience. So if you can flip that, like you said, and just be that positive experience, I think that'll help change the mentality, of the youth and how they view cops. And then to address the question that I forget, she just asked it, I forget her name, but what can we do right here, right now? So I would say Darius and Rob make great points as far as Black people. We need to get in our own communities and build up our youth. And then, for our allies, white people who want to help this change and help end racism, I would say, number one, educate your kids, educate the people around you, on Black culture, so that it removes that fear of what's different. And number two, if you are in a position of power, please use that power to make equitable decisions and, build your team to be diverse. If you have influence over, decisions, make sure that you bring in a person of color, to at that table to help influence that decision. So use your power to create the equitable change that we want to see and help end racism.
I think
I have something. It's not going to take long. Ms. Cole, to answer your question, it's going to take people like you, Ms. Jax, Ms. Wilbur, everybody that's on here. It's going to take all of us to work together. No matter how you look at it, it's going to take everybody right here on this meeting to work together, because there's some things I'm learning right now from everybody. And a lot of people, not just Black people, not just white people, even Hispanics, they're afraid to talk and to get to know somebody. It's like being an educator. You got to know your students. But just because that Black man over there have a body full of tattoos don't mean he's a thug. We have to take the time out to get to know that person. Prime example, I've been arrested several times. I can admit that, but I've never been convicted. And the reason why I got arrested is because false identity. They assume I had something I didn't. And the police department didn't want to be embarrassed and look bad. So while they arrested me, searched my car, they didn't find nothing. all of a sudden I resisted. Even though I beat those charges, but that's just how the system worked for an African American man.
Donovan.
I was just saying, man. I think Shaq brought out some key points as to like we trying to end racism. I think one of the key parts he brought up was like educating the children, which is key. But you said educating the children on Black culture. A lot of children and a lot of adults that are African American, they don't even know their true culture, like as far as like who we are as a people. Every colored kid that I know, or like colored kid that I grew up with, we all just think like slavery started in 1619. Well, like we had history way before that, and I think Darius, you had brought up a key point as well, as you were saying, plagues. Like these are plagues that are hitting like only these certain groups of people, and like I feel like until this group of people decide to do what they were supposed to do from the beginning, these things probably ain't never gonna stop, honestly, because another point somebody made earlier was like 55 years, like civil rights. I mean, that's key. We had multiple people that tried to like redeem us as colored people. Martin Luther King tried to redeem us. Malcolm X tried to redeem us. Nobody has been able to redeem us as a people. So I mean, like this stuff ain't just started happening with George Floyd, man. Like now that we have cameras, now stuff is being seen. Even back when the civil rights was going on, it didn't stop right after that. That stuff still been going on. But I feel like as a people, as colored people, and even as people who are not of color, because it's not only for colored people, until they realize like who they are as a people, I don't think none of this this stuff is going to change. And what I mean by as a people, and some people may not believe in the higher power, but clearly in a book, it like these people have been through all these curses of what's happening today. And I think it's key that we go back and research and understand like who are we? Because nobody walks around saying they're European American. Nobody, like, because you can't be from two continents at the same time. We the only race of people who are identified as African and American. We don't know where we come from. Everybody say just go back to Africa, but how many continents is on Africa? There's a lot of continents on Africa. So man, I think it's key. Everything that y'all said about moving forward education, that's definitely vital. But like the root of it all, is understanding who you are, and coming back to like what you were supposed to do in the first place as a people.
Wow, it's powerful. Would anyone like to chime in?
Not to be, and my intention isn't to be morbid here, but Rod, I wanted to kind of direct a question towards you. First and foremost, thank you for what you do in that area. I think that speaks volumes that you want to serve that community. And
thank you.
I think that's amazing. My one concern with police relations is the culture, in my mind, and I could be wrong, the culture that exists within the station already. Just kind of, it bothers me. It's disheartening in a sense, because I've seen good cops. I mean, for example, I was 20 years old. I came home. I played football in college. I came home very sporadically. I only got to be with my family for weeks at a time. There was one instance, me and two of my friends, we were downtown. He made an illegal U-turn and we were pulled over. I'll never forget it. I had my arm on the door because I thought it was very routine. Illegal U-turn. Okay, we did it. Cool. They flung all the doors open. I'll never forget. I fell out the car because I didn't think that they were going to open my door. He pulled me out. We had red beams on our chest. Mind you, I'm 20. I'm playing sports in college. I've literally done nothing. And there was one officer, I'll never forget it. He was a Hispanic guy. And for the entirety, it only lasted for about 20 minutes. Before the entirety of the situation, you could tell he was uncomfortable. He was like, man, like this is wrong. But in lieu, there were 12 other cops who were about that. This was fine. It was normal. This is what was going to take place. And I looked him in the eye. I'll never forget. I saw him, and he was uncomfortable during the whole situation. You could tell he knew it was wrong. It wasn't protocol. Yet he was outnumbered, in fact, and he had to just kind of go with what was, you know. And I that part is disheartening to me because I know there are good cops out here. I know that for a fact. I can tell by how you speak about the community. I can tell that you're a great guy. But, and I could be wrong, it just seems like there's a culture. It seems like there's a arrogance almost. It seems like there's a mobility in these certain officers that allow them to sit on people's necks for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You know what I mean? That allows them to break into a woman's home illegally after a 12-hour shift and shoot her 22 times and not be arrested. You know what I mean? That type of stuff, that's what I was speaking on earlier. That type of stuff is disheartening because I've even thought about it. You know, I'm from this area. Me and Darius, I know you remember when we talked about that. You know, hey, let's go be police officers.
Yeah.
But dude, that scene plays back in my mind almost every day. That dude knew that was wrong. I could tell he was a good guy, but he had to get down where he could because there was a culture. There was an unwritten, but he knew what time it was, and he better stay in line or it was going to be trouble. So
well,
that was a lot.
First and foremost, you know, it's unfortunate that has happened to you, and me being an officer, I'm sorry that has happened to you. But first and foremost, that one officer, lack of better terms, excuse my French, needs to grow a pair. One, that does not fly at all with us. I've been on 2 incidents where, when I was in uniform, where I literally had to put hands on this same officer for doing excessive force. For instance, we had a domestic violence call at a bus stop. We pulled up, the guy took off running on the bike. I chased him for a period of time, turned around, got back in my car, cut him off, jumped out. When he seen he was defeated, he just gave up instantly. So he got off the bike, hands up. I put his hands behind his back. I'm in the process of putting cuffs on. This officer comes, runs up, starts to knee him, and then pulls out his baton. I let this guy go, and I literally grabbed the other officer in his chest by his uniform and pushed him away and told him, walk it off. He's arrested. And he left. Everybody else pulled back up, and there's like, you all set? And I'm saying, yeah, he's already cuffed up. Put him in the car. Or should I say, search him, put him in the car. I didn't tell my supervisor. I'm not one of those officers that goes back and reports everything that's done to the supervisors, because I feel like man to man, right cops out here is doing the right things. We should be able to handle things the right way without getting management involved. Needless to say, after the second incident, that officer is no longer with us. But it gotta be the officers that's in that department that take a stand and make sure things like what happened to you does not happen at all. And I know I vowed to this day that things like that wouldn't fly with me, and I have never accepted it. Even with Detroit during the protests with over the murder of George Floyd, you had a whole bunch of Detroit cops out there running around trying to arrest protesters, and they asked our department for help, and my department sent everybody that's in our unit, the plainclothes unit, to go out there and help. It was me and my partner, and one Detroit officer came up running, trying to attack nurses, and we had to basically calm him down. We put the nurses in our cars and took them to to their car just so they can go home, because that's all they were trying to do was go home. So to answer your question, it got to be officers within that department that's willing to take a stand and not let things like that happen.
Can I ask you a question, Rod, about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why do you think more officers are not doing what you're doing? Why do you think they're not standing up against those officers? Do you think they're scared?
Absolutely. I honestly do think they're scared because, of course, you have a locker room culture. You had a locker room culture throughout sports. Anywhere, there's a locker room where there's talk behind closed doors, things gonna get brought up. People will talk. People will form other opinions about other people. Some people are afraid of that. And, just to break that fear, you just got to be willing to, know what you stand for, know the things that you value. I'm not about to disrespect nobody out here, because if you want respect, you got to give respect first and foremost. Secondly, I'm not about to abuse nobody's rights. I know my rights. You're the same as me. I know you have these same rights I have. So I'm not going to, just because I have a badge and a gun, act like I'm above the law, because I'm not. So if everything is done correctly, I don't always do things by the book, but I'm not out here breaking laws or, doing anything illegal. So it just comes down to that individual, honestly. I mean, it basically differs, from officer to officer.
Yeah.
Can I interject here real quick? We've
Absolutely.
got a question. We've got a question from Melissa Jacks. It says, how can the culture within the police departments of loyalty over accountability be changed? Can you answer that, Rod?
Honestly, I believe that starts with management. You would have to have first starting with a police chief. Our chief is excellent. He's wonderful. I love the guy to death. And it reflects on our supervisors. There's not a single supervisor that I can talk bad about within my department. Although there's definitely officers, but for our supervisors, they are pretty stern on, what the chief wants. So to break that loyalty and have accountability, it basically starts with the head guy and it trickles down on the leadership.
Okay.
Well, we've really reached the end of our time here. I want to make a comment here, and then I'd like Darius to finish up here. But I think this was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. I think part of a solution in dealing with racism is taking the time to listen and understand different perspectives and grow closer together. And that's something we each have to own as our responsibility to do that. So I'm really, really grateful for all of you that joined in and shared your different insights and questions and such. So Darius, is there anything you want to finish us out with on this?
Yeah. Again, thank you all for your time, your information, your knowledge. But I want to tell you all about a story. I was in the middle of a unit. I was working for Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And I was in the middle of a unit, 12 kids on the units, and I was doing my rounds, checking door by door. It's getting time for bedtime routine. Every kid, go to sleep, use the restroom, and it's time to go to sleep. And I intervened with this one kid, and I seen his wrist, and he had blood on his wrist. And I said, hey, man, what's going on? And he said, you know what, sir? I don't want to be remembered this way. Like, does my life matter? What do I need to do to get home? What did I do wrong? As he's cutting his wrist. And it really touched my heart to see that our youth have to encounter situations based on their environment. So I ask you all deeply, as you get into your communities, in your homes, remember this one question as I leave you, as I fight for Reconstruction for our youth. How will you be remembered? Don't let anyone drown out your voice. Remember, your opinion matters. And for everyone that's on this call, that's of Caucasian descent, we love you. We thank you. We appreciate you all for listening. And as you see rioting and looting, it's not that they're just thugs. It's not that they're just breaking in things. Our community is voiceless and we're tired of being unheard. We're tired of people not listening to the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis. So as I'm sitting here full of emotions, I love you all and I ask you that you please just understand where we're coming from. Our youth is the next generation and the way it's going now, it's not promising. But if we come together as people, it can be promising. So I ask you, as you reach your communities, your families, your kids, your aunties, your uncles, your cousins, your relatives, you ask yourself this question as you live every day: how will you be remembered? Leave a mark, leave your legacy. And remember that it's not about black and white. It's about love. It's about peace. It's about harmony. So again, I ask you all to just love your neighbor as you would want someone to love you despite of their skin color. So again, I pose this question: how will you be remembered? I love you all and thank you for joining us. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darius. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.